For 30 years, he built an empire on a stolen secret. Today, a 10-year-old girl ended. When the doorbell rang that morning, I felt something break inside me. I saw the paper in his hand. Foreclosure notice. Dad's hands were shaking when he took it. Mom yelled for the first time that night. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. Dad couldn't answer. I heard everything from behind the door. I wish I hadn't. Ella reached up to the top shelf. She pulled out a dusty old notebook. Grandma's recipes was written on the cover. We both knew. This was the proof we needed. "What are you doing here?" Voice ice cold. Ella pressed the book against her chest. "Stop, Grandpa. Never seen anyone that brave in my life." 15 years. That's how long Michael waited for this day. 15 years of working in other people's kitchens, saving every penny, dreaming about having his own place. And now here he was, standing in front of his own restaurant, with his name on the door. Well, not his name exactly. Grandma Rose's name, because none of this would exist without her. Rebecca couldn't stop crying, the happy kind of crying. And Nora just kept jumping up and down like it was Christmas morning. That first week was insane. Honestly, they weren't ready for it. Word got around so fast, people kept showing up. More and more every night. See, Grandma Rose had this reputation in town. Her recipes were legendary. And now her granddaughter was bringing them back. The lasagna, those meatballs, that sauce nobody could figure out. Michael was exhausted. Rebecca's feet were killing her. But every time they looked around at all those happy faces, totally worth it. Every single minute. Sunday mornings, their thing. No customers, no chaos. Just a dad teaching his daughter how to cook. Michael would lift Nora onto that wooden stool, little thing barely reached the counter. Show her how to stir without splashing. Crack an egg with one hand. Simple stuff, really. Meant everything, though. "Gotta taste as you go," he'd tell her. "That's the secret. Trust your tongue." Nora loved those mornings. More than anything, Nora never actually met Grandma Rose. She died before Nora was even born. But somehow, looking at that old photograph on the wall, Nora felt like she knew her anyway. Something about those eyes, that soft smile, like she was keeping a secret only she understood. "I really wish you were here," Nora said quietly. Just talking to a picture like it was the most normal thing in the world. And maybe it was crazy, but she could have sworn the old woman was listening. It happened out of nowhere. One day the lot across the street was empty. Next thing you know, construction crews everywhere. Trucks, cranes, the whole deal. 2 weeks later, the sign went up. Harrison's. Huge letters. Bright lights. You couldn't miss it if you tried. Michael felt sick the moment he saw it. Harrison's was a monster. 200 restaurants across the country, millions of dollars. And now they'd set up shop right across the street from his little family place. This wasn't a coincidence. No way. Something was very wrong. It happened so fast. One week the place was packed. Next week, nothing. Just empty chairs and cold tables. Harrison's had those crazy opening deals. Half-price meals, free desserts, buy one, get one free. How do you compete with that? You don't. You just watch your customers walk across the street. Rebecca sat there with her head in her hands. Michael couldn't even look at her. And Nora? She just stood there, not really understanding why everyone looked so scared all of a sudden. Nora woke up thirsty. Middle of the night. House was quiet. She went to get some water, and that's when she saw him. Her dad. Sitting at the kitchen table, head in his hands, bills everywhere. like someone dumped a whole mailbox on the table. He didn't see her standing there, didn't hear her either. He was just broken. She'd never seen her dad look like that before. Not once in her whole life. She didn't get her water. She just went back to bed. Scared, Nora found her at the park, sitting alone on a bench, blonde hair, fancy clothes. But something about her seemed really sad. "Hey, you okay?" Nora asked. The girl looked up, surprised, like nobody ever talked to her. "I'm fine," she said. But she obviously wasn't. Nora sat down next to her anyway. Didn't ask permission, just sat. Sometimes that's all you gotta do, just be there. "I'm Nora." The girl hesitated. Then quietly, "I'm Ella." Neither of them knew it yet. But everything was about to change. Weird thing about kids. They don't need much to become friends. A few jokes, a shared secret. That's pretty much it. Within an hour, Nora and Ella were acting like they'd known each other forever. Laughing about dumb stuff, making fun of teachers, talking about their favorite shows. Ella seemed like a totally different person now. Lighter, happier, like someone finally turned on a switch inside her. "You're really funny," Ella said. "You're really weird," Nora replied. They both cracked up. Best friends already, just like that. Rebecca's face went white the second she saw them together. "Nora, come here, now." Nora looked confused. "Mom, this is my friend Ella. We were just... I know who she is." Rebecca's voice was shaking. "Stay away from her." Ella looked terrified, like she wanted to disappear. "Mom, what's wrong with you? She didn't do anything." But Rebecca wasn't listening. She grabbed Nora's arm and started pulling her away. Nora looked back at Ella one last time. Something was very wrong here. And nobody was explaining anything. Nora had never yelled at her mom before. Not like this. But something inside her just snapped. "Why can't I see her? What did she do to you?" Rebecca tried to stay calm, tried to explain. But how do you explain 30 years of pain to a 10-year-old? That girl's family. They're not good people, Nora. Trust me. But Ella's not her family. She's just a kid, like me. She's sad and lonely, and she doesn't have any friends. And now I finally found someone who actually gets me. And you're telling me I can't see her? Nora's voice cracked. She was so tired of adults making decisions that didn't make any sense. "You don't understand," Rebecca said quietly. "Then explain it to me. Stop treating me like a baby." The room went silent. Rebecca looked at her daughter, really looked at her. When did she get so grown up? When did she start fighting back? "Her grandfather," Rebecca finally said. "He's the one who owns Harrison's, the restaurant across from ours." Nora blinked, processing. "So what? That's not Ella's fault." "It's complicated, sweetheart." "No, it's not. You're just being unfair." Nora turned and walked toward her room, stopped at the doorway. "Ella's the only friend I have. And if you make me stop seeing her, I'll never forgive you." The door slammed. Rebecca stood there alone, wondering when exactly she became the villain in her own daughter's story. Fights started small, like they always do. Comment about money. Sigh that lasted too long. Then exploded. "You think I don't know we're in trouble?" Michael's voice louder than he meant. "I'm there every day watching nobody come through those doors." "That's not what I'm saying." Rebecca crossed her arms, tears already forming. "I'm saying you shut me out. Don't tell me anything anymore." "Because I'm trying to protect you." "From what? Our own life?" Michael ran his hand through his hair. looked exhausted, beaten down, like a man carrying something too heavy for too long. You don't understand what he's doing to us. Then help me understand. Talk to me. Silence. Hum of the refrigerator. Tick of the kitchen clock. Harrison didn't just show up by accident. Michael finally picked that location on purpose. Right across from us. He's trying to destroy us, Rebecca, and I don't... He stopped. Don't know how to stop him. Rebecca's face changed. Anger to confusion to something darker. How do you know that? Michael looked away. Couldn't meet her eyes. Because this isn't the first time he's done this. To your family. Rebecca went still. What are you talking about? Ask your mother. Beat. Oh, wait. Can't. Because she's gone, and he's the reason why. Words hung in the air like smoke. Everything about to change. Rebecca hadn't cried like this in years. Not since her mother's funeral. Now it all came pouring out. Every memory, every wound she thought had healed. I was 12 when it happened. Between sobs. Michael held her hand tight. Listening. Finally listening. Mom had this little restaurant. Nothing fancy. Good food, happy customers. Built it from nothing. 18-hour days, whole heart into it. Wiped her face, shaky breath. Then Harrison showed up, wanted to buy her out. She said no. Rebecca paused. So he opened a place right next door. Same menu, lower prices, stole her recipes, her staff. Within a year, closed. Michael squeezed her hand harder. She never recovered. Dad left, got sick, and then... Couldn't finish. I didn't know. Michael, barely a whisper. You never told me. Because I tried to forget. Moved on. Built a new life. She looked at him. Then you came along with this crazy dream about opening a restaurant. How could I say no? Made you so happy. Old photograph on the table. Her mother, smiling in front of her little restaurant. The one Harrison destroyed. Now he's back, doing the same thing. To us, our family. Her voice cracked. Like a nightmare that never ends. Michael pulled her close, held tight. I'm not going to let him win. Promise you, whatever it takes. Even as he said it, wasn't sure he believed it. Knock came at 9 in the morning. Sharp, official. Kind of knock that makes your stomach drop before you even open the door. Michael's still in pajamas, hair messy, coffee in hand. Wasn't expecting anyone. Man on the porch wore a gray suit. Clean, pressed, no emotion on his face, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Mr. Michael Torres? Yeah, that's me. Held out a stack of papers. I'm here on behalf of First National Bank, official foreclosure notice. Words didn't register at first. Foreclosure. That something happens to other people. Not you, not your family. Must be some mistake. No mistake, sir. 90 days behind on your mortgage payments. Outstanding balance isn't paid within 30 days. Bank will begin proceedings to seize the property. Rebecca appeared behind Michael, face pale. What's going on? Man handed over the papers. Have a good day. Just like that. Walked back to his car, got in, drove away, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb on their lives. Rebecca grabbed the papers, started reading. Eyes got wider with every line. Michael, voice shaking. This says we owe $60,000. How is that possible? Michael couldn't look at her, couldn't speak. Michael, answer me. Silence told her everything she needed to know. You did what? Rebecca's scream echoed through the house. Standing in the middle of the living room, hands on her head, papers scattered everywhere. Michael sat on the couch, hunched over, broken. I had to. Quiet. We needed money to keep the restaurant open. Bank wouldn't give me a business loan, So you put our house up as collateral without telling me? Thought I could fix it. Thought if we just had a little more time. Time? Her voice cracked. Michael, we have 30 days. 30 days and we lose everything. Started pacing. Couldn't stand still. Whole body shaking. This house, our home, where Nora grew up, where we built our life. She stopped. Looked at him. And you just gambled it all away? Didn't gamble. Invested in our dream. Don't you dare call it our dream. She was crying now. This was your dream. I supported you because I love you, because I believed in you. And this is what you do? Lie to me? Risk everything we have? Michael finally looked up, eyes red, wet. I'm sorry. So sorry. Sorry doesn't pay the mortgage, Michael. Grabbed her keys, headed for the door. Where are you going? Don't know. Just can't be here right now. Can't look at you. Door slammed. Michael sat alone. Silence. Papers on the table. Weight of his mistakes crushing him. $60,000. 30 days. Family falling apart. Nora knew she wasn't supposed to be here. Mom made that pretty clear. Stay away from that girl. But since when did Nora listen? Found Ella waiting in the alley behind the old hardware store. Nervous, fidgeting with her hands, looking like she might run any second. You came. Almost surprised. Of course I came. Sounded weird on the phone. What's going on? Ella didn't answer right away. Just stood there, chewing her lip. Whatever she was about to say, big. Need to tell you something about my grandfather. What he did. Nora felt her stomach tighten. Heard bits and pieces from her mom about Harrison, about Grandma Rose. Nobody ever gave her the whole story, though. Okay. Listening. Not here. Someone might see us. Ella glanced around like she expected her grandfather to pop out of nowhere. There's a bench in the woods, behind the park. Nobody goes there. Walked in silence. 2 kids carrying secrets way too heavy for their age. Nora kept looking at Ella. Friend seemed different today. Scared, like she was about to betray her own family. Maybe she was. Ella, whatever it is, you can tell me. Won't judge you. Ella nodded. Didn't look convinced. You might, after you hear what I have to say. Sat on that old wooden bench, just the 2 of them. Trees all around. Nobody to hear. Then Ella started talking. Once she started, couldn't stop. My grandfather isn't who everyone thinks he is. Not some self-made businessman. She paused. He's a thief. Nora didn't say anything. Just listened. 30 years ago, there was this woman, Rose, had a little restaurant, amazing food. Everyone loved it. Grandfather wanted to buy her out. She said no. Ella wiped her eyes, tears already coming. So he stole her recipes, every single one, copied them, opened his own place right next to hers. Same food, lower prices, drove her out of business. Nora felt cold. Sun was shining, but cold. That woman. That was my grandmother. Grandma Rose. Ella nodded. I know. Found out last month. Was looking for something in his office and found this old notebook. Handwritten recipes. But the handwriting wasn't his. Beat. Name on the cover said Rose. He kept it all these years. Like a trophy. Ella's voice went bitter. Proud of what he did. Brags about it sometimes. Calls it smart business. Nora's hands shaking. This man destroyed her grandmother's life. Her family. Now doing it again. That book. Slowly. Is it still there? In his office? Ella looked at her. Scared. But something else too. Determined. Yeah, still there. This was the dumbest thing Nora had ever done. And she'd done some pretty dumb things. Breaking into Harrison's office at night with his own granddaughter. If they got caught, it was over. For both of them. You sure about this? Nora whispered. Ella's hand was shaking on the doorknob. No, but we're doing it anyway. The door creaked open. The office was dark. Just moonlight coming through the big windows. Everything looked blue and silver and terrifying. Where is it? Nora could barely hear her own voice. Bookshelf, behind the desk. Third shelf from the top. They moved like ghosts, trying not to make a sound. Every creak of the floor made Nora's heart jump. The office smelled like cigars and leather. Rich person smell. The kind of smell that says, I own everything and everyone. Nora hated it. There, Ella pointed. The bookshelf was huge, floor to ceiling, hundreds of books. But Ella knew exactly where to look. She'd been planning this for weeks. Help me, I can't reach. Nora grabbed a chair, pushed it over. Ella climbed up. I see it. It's here. Nora held her breath. This was it. The proof. The evidence that could save her family's restaurant. Save their house. Save everything. Ella's fingers touched the old leather cover. And then the lights came on. For one perfect moment, everything was beautiful. Ella held the notebook up in the moonlight. Old, worn, leather cover cracked and faded. But the label on front, clear as day. Grandma's recipes, 1880. Wait, couldn't be right. 1880? Over 100 years ago. It's a family book, Nora whispered. Passed down, generation to generation. Ella opened it carefully. Pages yellow, fragile, filled with handwriting from different eras, different hands. Mothers teaching daughters, grandmothers sharing secrets. And there, page after page, recipes Nora recognized. The meatballs, the lasagna, that tomato sauce nobody could figure out. This is it. Barely breathing. This is everything. Grandmother's whole life in this book. Great-grandmother's too. Generations of women cooking with love, passing down knowledge. Harrison just took it, like it was nothing. Have to get this to my parents. Nora's voice steadier now. Proves everything. He can't deny it. Ella nodded, but looking at the book with tears in her eyes. My grandfather's a monster. Always knew something was wrong with him. Way he talked about people, like they were nothing. But this, not your fault, Ella. I know. Quiet, but still my family. Nora squeezed her hand. Not anymore. You're with us now. Smiled at each other. Two girls against the world. That's when the light clicked on. Harrison stood in the doorway, hand on the light switch, face like thunder. Long moment. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Three of them frozen in time. Then his eyes found the book in Ella's hands. Something changed in his expression. Anger got colder, sharper, more dangerous. Well, well. Voice quiet, almost calm, somehow worse than yelling. My own granddaughter, breaking into my office, stealing from me. Ella couldn't speak, couldn't move. Deer in headlights. And you brought a friend. Harrison's gaze shifted to Nora, studied her face. You're the cook's daughter, from that little place across the street. Nora found her voice. Barely. My grandmother's place, the one you destroyed. Harrison smiled, actually smiled, like this was amusing. Destroyed? No, sweetheart. Improved on it. That's business. Strong eat the weak. He tilted his head. Your grandmother was weak. Apparently so was your father. Took a step into the room, then another. Give me the book, Ella. She clutched it tighter. No. Excuse me. said no, voice shaking, but didn't back down. You stole this from her family, and you're going to pay for it. Harrison laughed. Cold, hollow. Pay for it? Another step. Oh, sweetheart, I'm Harrison. Don't pay for anything. Reached for the book. That's when they heard the sirens. Harrison took a step forward, then another, eyes locked on that book like it was made of gold. Which, in a way, it was. Whole empire built on what was inside those pages. Give it to me, Ella. Now. But Ella didn't move, didn't flinch. Something had changed in her. All those years scared of him. All those years staying quiet. Over. No. Harrison stopped. Wasn't used to hearing that word. Not from anyone, especially not from a 10-year-old. Excuse me? Said no. Ella's voice got stronger, louder. And if you try to stop us, I'll tell everyone. Newspapers, TV, everyone in this town. Tell them exactly who you really are. What you did to Rose, her family, everything. Nora stood right beside her, ready to run if she had to, also ready to fight. Harrison's face went through about 15 emotions in 5 seconds. Anger, shock, confusion, and then fear. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Ella held up her phone. Already took pictures of every page, backed up to the cloud. You can take this book, but you can't erase what's in it. Truth is out there now. Forever. Silence, long and heavy. Harrison looked at his granddaughter. Really looked like seeing her for the first time. When did you become so... what? Brave? She didn't blink. Maybe he learned it from Nora. Maybe he learned it watching you destroy people my whole life and finally deciding I didn't want to be like that. Words hit him like punches, each one harder than the last. Stepped back, again. Hand dropped to his side. Go. Quiet. Just go. Girls didn't wait for him to change his mind. Ran. Out the door, down the stairs, into the night. Book clutched tight against Ella's chest. Behind them, Harrison stood alone in his office, surrounded by expensive things, awards, photos, his empire. First time in 30 years, felt the weight of what he'd done. Sank into his chair, head in his hands. What now? What do you do when a 10-year-old shows you exactly who you've become? Sat there for hours, thinking, remembering, things buried so deep he forgot they existed. Rose's face. Day he took her recipes. Look in her eyes when she realized. Told himself it was just business. Competition. Strong survive. How the world works. But sitting alone in the dark, couldn't hide anymore. Wasn't strong. Was a thief. A coward. Man who built everything on someone else's broken dreams. Now his own granddaughter ashamed of him. That hurt more than anything. Ran all the way to the restaurant. Didn't stop once. Burst through the front door of Grandma Rose's, gasping for air. Michael nearly dropped the pan he was holding. Rebecca came running from the back. Nora, what are you doing here? And Ella? She looked between them. What's going on? Nora couldn't speak, too out of breath. So Ella stepped forward, held up the book. Found it. The proof. Everything. Rebecca's face went white. What is that? Your mother's recipe book. One Harrison stole 30 years ago. Was in his office. Hidden in his bookshelf like some kind of trophy. Restaurant went dead quiet. Even the few customers stopped eating. Turned to look. Rebecca's hands shaking as she reached for the book. Opened it slowly. Carefully, like it might crumble to dust. Then she saw it. The handwriting. Her mother's handwriting. Oh my God. Voice cracked. This is Mom's. Really hers. Traced her fingers over the words. Recipes from childhood. Meals her mother made when she was Nora's age. Tomato sauce, meatballs, lasagna that tasted like home. All of it. Right here, in her hands. How did you... Looked at the girls. How did you get this? Nora finally caught her breath. Broke into his office. Tonight. Ella knew where he kept it. You did what? Mom, wait, listen. Nora held up her hand. He caught us. Harrison found us in there. But Ella stood up to him, told him if he tried to stop us, she'd tell everyone what he did. Beat. She was amazing. Rebecca looked at Ella. Quiet, shy girl, terrified of her own grandfather. Showed up out of nowhere, became her daughter's best friend. You did that? For us? Ella nodded. He's my grandfather. But what he did was wrong. Couldn't let him keep getting away with it. Rebecca pulled her into a hug, held tight. Thank you. So much. Michael stood there, still holding his pan, tears in his eyes. So this proves it. Everything your mom always said. Harrison really did steal her recipes. Yeah. Rebecca wiped her face. He really did. Looked down at the book again. All those years wondering. All those years of doubt. Finally over. Mom whispered to the pages. We got it back. Finally got it back. Nora and Ella stood together, holding hands. They'd done it. 2 kids against a billionaire. Won. Well, mostly won. Hardest part still coming. Had to figure out what to do next. Knock came around 9 o'clock. Soft, almost hesitant. Not the kind of knock you'd expect from a man like Harrison. Michael looked through the peephole. Jaw tightened. It's him. Rebecca on her feet in a second. Face hard, eyes burning. Let him in. Michael opened the door. There stood Harrison. No fancy suit this time. No power stance. Just an old man in a coat. Looked like he hadn't slept in days. Can I... Rebecca didn't let him finish. How dare you? How dare you come to our home after everything you've done? Harrison opened his mouth. No, you don't get to talk. You get to listen. Stepped closer, finger pointing right at his face. Do you have any idea what you did to my mother? Gave everything to that restaurant. Whole life, whole heart. And you just took it like it was nothing. Like she was nothing. Harrison didn't move. Didn't look away. She died thinking she was a failure. Know that? Rebecca's voice shaking. Thought she did something wrong. Wasn't good enough. When the truth was, never had a chance. Because you made sure of that. 30 years of pain pouring out all at once. Then you came here. Our town. Set up shop right across from us. Just to do it all over again. Finish what you started. Rebecca. Almost lost our house, our home. Michael put everything on the line for this restaurant, and you were going to take it all. Just like you took everything from my mother. Crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. My daughter had to break into your office, a 10-year-old. Risk everything to find the truth. Because you buried it so deep, nobody could find it. Harrison's eyes wet too. First time Michael had ever seen that. And the worst part? Absolute worst? Rebecca's voice dropped to a whisper. Spent my whole life thinking maybe my mom was exaggerating. Maybe it wasn't as bad as she said. Maybe she was just bitter. Pause. But she wasn't. It was worse. And you knew it. Knew it the whole time. Silence. Long. Painful. Harrison stood there, taking every word, not defending himself, not making excuses, just listening. I'm sorry. Finally. No, it doesn't mean anything. But I'm sorry. You're right. Rebecca's voice cold. Doesn't mean anything. Stepped back. Go home, Harrison. Nothing for you here. Closed the door in his face. Next morning. Before the restaurant opened, Harrison showed up at the door, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Rebecca almost didn't let him in, but something in his face made her stop. "I'm closing Harrison's," he said. "All of it. Every single location." She stared at him. "What?" "I can't undo what I did to your mother, but I can stop doing it to other people." He pulled out a folded paper. "I'm also setting up a fund, in Rose's name, for small restaurant owners who are struggling." Rebecca looked at the paper, then at him. "Why now, after 30 years?" "Because a 10-year-old girl showed me who I really was." His voice cracked. "And I hated what I saw." Silence. "I don't forgive you," Rebecca said quietly. "Not yet, but thank you for finally telling the truth." Harrison nodded and walked away. 3 months later, Grandma Rose's was packed, every table full, line out the door, just like those first magical weeks, except now it never stopped. Word had spread. Stolen recipes, brave little girls who uncovered the truth, villain who finally confessed and shut down his empire. Kind of story people couldn't resist. But for Nora, none of that mattered as much as what was happening right now. Ella sitting across from her. Same booth they always shared. Corner by the window where they could watch people walk by and make up stories about their lives. Okay. Ella trying not to laugh. "What about that guy? One with the hat?" Nora studied him. "Definitely a spy. Look at the way he keeps checking his watch, waiting for a secret contact." "Totally. And the woman behind him? Arch nemesis. Pretending to read that menu but actually watching his every move." Both cracked up. Same dumb game since they met. Never got old. Rebecca walked by with a tray, smiled at them. Smile came easier now. Lines around her eyes not so deep anymore. "You two want dessert? Dad made fresh tiramisu." "Yes." Unison. Looked at each other, laughed again. In the kitchen, Michael was in his element. White coat on, music playing, dancing a little while he stirred the sauce. Did that now. Danced while he cooked. Hadn't done that in years. Recipe book sat on a special shelf he'd built. Glass case, soft lighting. Right next to the photo of Grandma Rose, where everyone could see. Sometimes customers asked about it. Michael would tell them the story, whole thing, from the beginning. Didn't leave out the hard parts. Almost losing everything. Sleepless nights, fear, but made sure to mention the good parts too. 2 little girls who saved them. Friend his daughter found in the most unlikely place. Way things can change when you least expect. Outside, new sign in the window. Rose's original recipes, family tradition since 1880. Next to it, smaller sign. Proud supporter of the Rose Foundation for Small Restaurants. Harrison's money, going where it should have gone 30 years ago. Nora looked out the window. Empty building across the street, where Harrison's used to be. For lease sign now. "Ever feel weird about it?" she asked Ella. "Your grandpa's shutting everything down." Ella thought about it. Sometimes. Was kind of a jerk, but still my grandpa, you know. Shrugged. Think he's happier now, though. Less stressed. Actually called me last week just to talk. Never did that before. That's good. Yeah, is. Sat in comfortable silence, watching the restaurant buzz around them. "Hey, Nora?" "Yeah? Thanks. For, being my friend. Even when you found out who my family was." Nora reached across the table, grabbed her hand. "You're not your family, Ella. You're you. And you're pretty awesome." Ella smiled. That real smile she only started doing after they became friends. You're pretty awesome too. Michael came out with 2 plates of tiramisu, set them down with a flourish. For my 2 favorite troublemakers. Girls dove in, laughing, talking, being kids. And across the restaurant, hanging on the wall, Grandma Rose watched over them all. Same gentle smile, like she always knew somehow everything would work out in the end.